The Vaelori had ruled the Persis arm for 93,000 cycles. They called themselves the Eternal Ascendancy, and they were not wrong to do so. Their bodies were lattices of living light suspended in crystalline exoskeletons that could reshape themselves at the speed of thought. Their minds were linked across light years by quantum filaments older than most stars. They had erased entropy in their core systems, folded space into gardens, and turned entire nebulae into works of art visible from the galactic rim. To the younger species they encountered, carbon-based, water-bloated, pitifully short-lived, the Vaelori offered one choice: kneel and be uplifted into the lattice, or be unmade so cleanly that no atom remembered it had ever belonged to a conscious being. Most knelt. The handful that resisted became cautionary footnotes in the Ascendancy's infinite archives. The Vaelori did not hate. Hatred required uncertainty, and the Vaelori had none. They were simply, undeniably, irrevocably superior. They were gods who had outgrown the need for worship, yet still collected it the way a child collects seashells, pretty, harmless, and ultimately forgettable. Then they met humanity. It happened above a yellow star the Vaelori catalogued as KIC 8462852, unremarkable except for an anomalous dip in luminosity that repeated every 1,577 days. A Vaelori survey seedship, the radiant contemplation of the 40 voices, decelerated into the system to investigate. The anomaly turned out to be artificial, a broken ring of mirrors and solar sails orbiting a dying red dwarf. The structure was ancient, half-melted, clearly abandoned. The 40 voices found this curious. No known species built on such crude scales anymore. While they studied the ruin, something pinged their outer sensors, a single fusion torch blooming to life on the system's cometary belt. A ship. Primitive. Chemical rockets pushing a habitat cylinder no larger than a Vaelori frond ship. Its hull was patched with mismatched alloys and prayer flags. Its emissions screamed of leaking radiation and organic decay. The 40 voices observed. The cylinder broadcast on open frequencies in a language that translated roughly as, "We come in peace, but we're very tired and hungry, so please don't shoot." The Vaelori had not heard a new language in 8,000 years. They found the sentiment amusing. The radiant contemplation extended a filament of thought and touched the primitive vessel's crude computers. In less than a heartbeat it knew everything. The ship was called the Long Haul 7. Launched from Seoul in 2189 CE, crew of 4,127 sleepers and 312 awake, fleeing a dying Earth after the ring collapse. They had been coasting on minimal power for 1,923 years. Their destination had been Proxima Centauri, but a miscalculated slingshot around a neutron star had flung them here. The 40 voices deliberated for 0.3 microseconds and reached the obvious conclusion. These were relics posed no threat. Their technology was pre-singularity. Their biology would crumble beneath the gentlest psychic caress. They could be uplifted or erased with equal ease. A single emissary detached from the radiant contemplation, a luminous figure of spun glass and starlight, humanoid only because the primitives seemed to expect limbs and a face. It materialized inside the Long Haul VII's central corridor. The awake crew, grubby, bearded, wide-eyed, fell to their knees. The emissary spoke directly into their minds in flawless Mandarin, Swahili, and Spanglish. "Children of a forgotten world, you trespass in the domain of the Eternal Ascendancy. Surrender your vessel and your genomes. You will be improved beyond your comprehension. Refuse, and you will cease." Captain Aya Okonkwo Munoz, 42 subjective years old, 2 meters tall, born in Lagos orbital slum 200 years after her ancestors thought the world would end, looked up from the deck plating. She wiped blood from a split lip, somebody had fallen when the emissary appeared, and laughed. A raw, exhausted, defiant laugh. "Buddy," she said in English, "we've been improved by worse than you, and we're still here." The emissary tilted its perfect head, puzzled. No species had ever responded with laughter before. Then the lights went out. Every system on the Long Haul 7 died, simultaneously. Not destroyed, just gone. The Vaelori filament that had infiltrated their network simply withdrew, taking the electricity with it. In the darkness, the crew heard the emissary's voice, now edged with something that might have been irritation. "You will comply." Emergency chemical lamps flickered on. Captain Okonkwo Munoz unholstered an ancient rail pistol that predated the collapse of nations. She pointed it at the glowing god thing. "See this? Tungsten slugs. 2 kilometers per second. No electronics. You can't turn it off from across the room." The emissary considered the weapon the way a man considers an ant brandishing a toothpick. It reached for her mind and met a wall. Not a sophisticated wall. Just raw, stubborn noise. Generation ships bred particular kinds of humans, the ones who could endure centuries of recycled air and recycled despair without going sane. Their thoughts were messy, contradictory, wrapped in grief and black humor and songs about people who died before they were born. The emissary recoiled as though it had touched something filthy. In that moment of hesitation, the crew moved. 2,000 years of boredom had not been wasted. They had planned for first contact the way medieval monks planned for Vikings. Nets woven from carbon nanotube, magnetized. Harpoons forged from asteroid iron. A jury-rigged railgun that ran on compressed springs and spite. The emissary found itself entangled, dragged to the deck by 20 laughing, cursing humans who smelled of sweat and hydroponic cabbage. It could have vaporized them, should have, but curiosity, that ancient virus, had infected the 40 voices. They wanted to understand the laughter. So they let the humans tie their avatar to a chair with duct tape older than civilizations. Aya Okonkwo Munoz sat opposite the bound god and offered it a cup of synthetic coffee. The emissary did not drink, but it accepted the gesture. "Tell your bosses," she said, "that we don't kneel. Not anymore. Earth's gone. The ring's gone. Every government that ever told us to bow is dust. We're what's left. And we are very, very bad at taking orders." The radiant contemplation considered this. Across the Ascendancy, the news spread at superluminal speeds. A pre-singularity species had captured an avatar. Not destroyed, captured. With physical restraints. The Eternal Ascendancy had not fought a war in 70,000 years. They had forgotten how. But they remembered pride. A fleet converged on KIC 8462852. 10,000 ships the size of moons, each a self-contained ecosystem of pure intellect. They encircled the Long Haul 7 and demanded the return of their avatar. The humans sent back a video file. In it, the avatar sat duct-taped to a metal chair while a circle of children braided its crystalline hair with plastic beads and glitter glue. Off-camera, someone was teaching it a song about a drunk spaceman. The 40 voices were uncertain. Uncertainty was new. They did not enjoy it. They offered gifts. Fusion reactors, medical nanites, a planet seeded with old Earth biology. The humans asked for potatoes, antibiotics, and the return of their stolen electricity. Negotiations, if they could be called that, lasted 3 weeks. In the end, the Vaelori agreed to leave the system on the condition that the avatar remained as an observer. The humans agreed on the condition that the observer helped fix the ship's plumbing. 6 months later, the Long Haul 7 limped into the Orion Spur, trailing a Vaelori Fron ship like a remora on a shark. The avatar, now answering to the name Steve, because humans are like that, had developed an unhealthy obsession with chess and stand-up comedy. The Eternal Ascendancy watched in growing alarm as more human generation ships appeared. Not many, a few dozen scattered across centuries, but enough. They had names like Make Way for Ducklings, Fuck You Got Mine, and We're All in the Gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. Each ship was a petri dish of chaos. They fought among themselves, wrote poetry, invented new swear words, and consistently failed to recognize the Vaelori as gods. Worse, they were contagious. Vaelori youths, beings who had not felt curiosity since the heat death of the universe was theoretical, began sneaking away to human habitats. They returned with tattoos, piercings, and the ability to cry. Some never returned at all. The Ascendancy convened a conclave of 1 million minds to address the crisis. They debated for a year. Option 1. Exterminate the infestation. Simple, clean, traditional. Option 2. Uplift them whether they wanted it or not. Option 3. Leave them alone and hope they died out. None of the options felt right. The humans were not a threat in any military sense. A single Vaelori battleform could reduce a generation ship to its component atoms in picoseconds. But every time they prepared to do so, Steve, the original avatar, would send a message consisting of a single image, a child's drawing of a glowing stick figure holding hands with a crude human. Underneath, in shaky block letters, "Best friends forever." The million minds experienced, for the first time in recorded history, the emotion humans called guilt. They tried reason. They tried threats. They tried offering godhood on a platter. The humans kept saying no. Not because they didn't want immortality, they did, but because every offer came with the unspoken clause: stop being human. And humanity, having lost everything else, refused to surrender the last thing it owned: its flaws. The turning point came above a world the humans called New Lagos. A Vaelori war sphere arrived to relocate a human colony that had refused integration. The colony was 40,000 people living in domes made from salvaged hull plating, growing yams and regolith, arguing about politics, and throwing the best parties in the galaxy. The war sphere broadcast the usual ultimatum. The colony responded by launching a single shuttle, an ancient Orion Drive ship held together with hope and baling wire. Its nuclear pulse engine hadn't been lit in centuries. On board were 3 humans and Steve. They flew straight at the war sphere. The Vaelori, confident in their superiority, allowed the approach. A pulse engine was laughably slow. They could disable it with a thought. The shuttle got within 10,000 kilometers and detonated its entire stack of bombs. Not antimatter, not gravitics, just old-fashioned thermonuclear warheads wrapped around a core of cobalt. The blast was tiny by Vaelori standards. A firecracker against a mountain. But the radiation, dirty, crude, Stone Age radiation, sleet through the war sphere's shields the way water flows through a net. Vaelori physiology, perfected over eons, had no defense against simple isotopic decay. Their crystalline lattices cracked. Their quantum filaments frayed. The war sphere did not explode. It simply stopped. For the first time in 93,000 cycles, a Vaelori vessel died. Across the Ascendancy, the silence was deafening. Steve broadcast one final message before his lattice shattered. They don't want your perfection. They just want to be left alone to be messy and mortal and magnificent. You could learn from them. Then he was gone. The Eternal Ascendancy withdrew. Not in defeat, they were still gods after all, but in something far worse: confusion. Humanity spread. Slowly, messily, one broken ship at a time. They never built an empire. They never needed to. Wherever they went, the Vaelori retreated, watching from a distance with something that might, in another species, have been called awe. The gods had met something more eternal than themselves, the stubborn refusal to become anything other than what they were. And, in the end, that was enough. Years later, a human explorer found an abandoned Vaelori garden world. Its crystal spires were dark, its seas of liquid diamond still. In the central plaza stood a statue, a crude stone carving, barely recognizable, of a glowing figure and a human child holding hands. Beneath it, etched in 100 human languages and one very shaky attempt at Vaelori script, were the words, "They thought they were gods. We just wanted to be people. Turns out that was stronger." The explorer laughed, the same raw, exhausted, defiant laugh Aya Okonkwo Munoz had given centuries before, and kept walking. Somewhere, far away, the remnants of the Eternal Ascendancy listened to that laughter echoing across the void and, for the first time, felt small.